Mrs. O'Loughlin here, and we are going to be working on Chapter 4 out of your textbook. We'll look at a few of these slides and then we'll go in and look at some of the sample programs that deal with these sections. We'll probably group together sections 1 through 4 is going to be my guess right now. And so also notice as we work on decision structures, we're going to be working on validating input and more about the scope of variables, some more with strings and characters, etc., and some special considerations towards the end of the chapter. So you should be a little bit familiar with the relational operators from mathematics, and they are the same as mathematics. The difference would be is how we type them on the keyboard. And so if you want to do greater than or equal to, it's 2 keys on the keyboard, greater than or equal to, and then less than or equal to. Another one that's easy to forget is the equality statement. Remember that a single equals means assignment, and so a double equals is what we use to test the equality of data. And then last but not least, we have a special operator that's called the not equals, or that uses the not operator in front of the equal sign, and so that's going to test for not equals. Your checkpoint exercises will have you practicing with these relational operators. So whenever you have an expression that involves a relational operator, it yields a Boolean value, which is a true or false. And so all of these examples will yield a true or a false. And if you choose x to be 10 and you try all of these comparisons, it will yield true if it's equal to 10, false because 10 is not greater than it 10 is not less than or equal to 8. 10 is not equal to 8, so that's going to be true, and is 10 equal to 8 is false. And so that just kind of shows you how those comparison operators work. A comparison evaluation of an expression can be assigned to a variable. So what they're trying to show you here is if I have a decision statement here, x less than or equal to y, that true or false value can be assigned to a variable. And so sometimes you have a condition that needs to be tested, and oftentimes this might be like a continuation condition if you want to, or a status condition that you want to store for a Boolean for. It will assign 0 for false and 1 for true. Again, the reminder that you don't want to mix up the equal sign with the assignment statement. So a single equals is assignment, a double equals is checking equality. You will be working with, and we will go through several sample programs here in a few minutes. This is just kind of an overview. You will be working with an if statement, which is what we call a single selection statement. So you have one question, and if that question is true, all of these statements are executed. It's a pretty common mistake when you're first learning C++ to try to put semicolons at the end of this parentheses, and that's because we have semicolons at the end of statements. But this is a question, so that's not the end of the statement. It's like, if this is true, we're going to do the following. And so just kind of be aware of that. If the condition is true, the statement in the body is executed. If the condition is false, it is skipped. So this is called a single selection because you have, if it's true, we do one thing. If it's false, nothing happens. Okay? Examples are provided here, and we will go through some examples with the textbook code in a little bit. If is a keyword, so it has to be lowercase. The condition is anything that is inside that parentheses. Again, no semicolon after the parentheses, and then curly braces around a multi-statement body. What they're indicating there is that you don't have to have the parentheses around a single statement, but I'm going to recommend that you do. Every statement has a semicolon after it, and it is a good style. This is what style recommendations mean, to place them on a separate line. It's good style to indent the body, and then when using curly braces, put the curly braces on lines by themselves because that increases readability. What is true and what is false? An expression whose value is 0 is considered false. Any non-zero is considered true. So this is a little bit different than if I'm actually assigning a value to a Boolean, it gets assigned a 0 or a 1. But if you're evaluating something, if it's non-zero, it's considered true. And an expression does not need to be a comparison. It can be a single variable or a mathematical expression. When that happens, it's what we call a flag value. And so a variable that singles a condition is a flag, usually a Boolean, usually true. It's true if the condition exists, and usually we set it to false if the condition does not. Flag values can be used to both set and be tested with if statements. Here is an example. If I have valid months is assigned true, if months is less than 0, then valid months is assigned false. And so what they're testing here is that months would fall between 1 and 12, so they're kind of error trapping here. Or we could then the if statement here takes that true or false value and says if it's a valid month, we are going to calculate a payment for that month. So the first one here is kind of an example of setting a flag value. The second one is using that flag value to make a decision and then perform an action. Integer flags can be used as flags as well. So remember that a 0 means false, any other value means true. So I can take an integer and assign it 0, so that's basically saying it's false. And then if count is greater than maximum students, I'm going to say all done is 1. So basically what they're saying here is if I'm all the way through processing whatever data for students that I'm done processing, I'm going to say all done is 1. And then I can say if all done, I'm going to output that I'm done with my task. I'm done averaging your scores or whatever needs to be done with the students. So you can also use an integer variable to toggle this decision statement on and off. An if-else statement is a dual selection statement, and what that means is it has two branches. We perform one action if it's true, and another action if it's false. And we often need to do this, so we will have, if the condition is true, we're going to do everything in the first set. If the condition is false, we do everything in the second set. In code, it looks like this. If the condition is true, do everything in this first set. Otherwise, perform the actions in the second set. This is a dual selection statement. There are some examples here, and we will also look at examples via the source code files from the textbook. When you compare floating point numbers, this is going to be a topic I'll talk about in a video, but it's better to use greater than or less than tests. And the reason for that is if a round off error. It's very, very difficult to actually get, or you really can't get an equality to a double because of the way the computer rounds. The last section 4.4 that we'll group together with our first set of videos is the if-else if statement. So this is a chain of statements that are going to address a particular situation. So I might have if this selection, otherwise the next selection, otherwise the next selection. One example of this is a menu, but I have a better way that I'd like you to use a menu when using menus. The last else in an if-else statement, this last else down here, or the last, this is if, else if, and I might have another else after it. That's called the trailing else. It's used with an if-else if statement when all the conditions are false. It gets to the trailing else. It provides a default, basically, and that default is if nothing else passes muster, then this is what's going to happen. You can use it to catch invalid values or to handle exceptions. So here's an example. If age is greater than or equal to 21, adult, greater than or equal to 13, a teen, greater than or equal to 2, a child, and if it fails all of those others, then it's going to be a baby. So this is the trailing else. You don't have to have a question on the trailing else because it's all the other conditions have failed. And that's going to be where we're going to look at a variety of different videos and do sections 1 through 4.